Okay, so first of all, something about the Europe Jams. They are part of a European public sphere project, and usually we tour around Europe to gather people under a wooden dome to talk about different topics and have a discussion. But due to the current situation, we can't do that, and so we try to make this an online project. And we want to collect all your ideas and thoughts on the future of Europe in form of an online exhibition and present those ideas directly to the EU Commission. And also I'd like to add that this project is funded by the Alfred Töpfer Foundation. And our topic today is Digital Europe, which is a very broad topic. So I'm pretty excited for our discussion today and for all of your ideas.
Yeah, now to make sure that everyone can speak and discuss their ideas, you can click on the participants button, and there you can see the virtual hand feature. Yeah, so if you have a comment, just raise your hand virtually, and but please wait till the last person to speak has finished. Yeah, to get started, maybe everyone can introduce themselves really shortly. I see a few people who actually have been active in the field, trying to change existing policies and measures for the better. But first off, I would say everyone introduces themselves shortly and tell us why you're interested in the topic Digital Europe. I can start with myself and introduce myself. So I'm Josie and I'm working for Democracy International as an intern. I'm totally not an expert on the topic, but I think that digitalization has so many influential aspects on our future that a discussion on it is indispensable. As a young European myself, I am wondering what the EU is doing to progress the transnational digitalization. And therefore, I'm really excited to hear about your opinions and experiences, especially as we have so many people of different areas in this field with us today. I'm really excited to hear and learn from you. Yeah, and that's all from my side right now. And maybe someone else will want to continue and introduce themselves. Maybe Justin, you want to start?
Yeah, sure, I can. So I'm Justin Nogarede. I'm Digital Policy Advisor at FEPS, and FEPS stands for Foundation for European Progress. It's a think tank in Brussels, progressive think tank, so we're kind of linked to socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament. And yeah, there I work on digital policy. Before I worked a little bit in the European Commission as well on digital single market, so a lot of like digital policy making. And yeah, these are exciting times. Josephine, you mentioned that you were interested to learn what the EU is doing. The EU is doing a lot, so they're looking at new regulations in the next month for big online platforms, so social media, Facebook, YouTube, etc., etc. There's new laws coming on artificial intelligence, for instance, early next year. So there's a lot happening there. And I think what I'm really interested in is that, and I think I'm a little bit older than you, so I don't know if you still remember that, but in the 90s you had, dial-in connection for the internet, that screeching sound, slow connection, people coming up with their own websites, their own blogs. It all felt very amateurish. And right now that of course completely changed. So in the last 10-20 years, everybody has a smartphone, and the internet kind of became this domain of huge online platforms and it's quite centralized. Also the power around it. I remember in the 90s, people were like, yes, democracy everywhere, everybody is connected, world peace, etc. That was kind of the vibe hanging around digital technology. And now that completely switched. Right now people talk about how Facebook is destroying democracy. And I'm really in Brussels, I see exactly how those debates play out and how people try to regulate that and all those difficult trade-offs, right? Because on the one hand, you want free speech. On the other hand, you don't want to give people just the freedom to say whatever crap they want to say, or to have hate speech out there, child pornography, etc. So there's a lot of those difficult discussions, and that's really something I find really interesting. And yeah, I'm really involved in that as well. So just as a first start, that's what I'm busy with. Thanks.
Thank you. That sounds good. Who wants next? You can raise your hand, or maybe Florian, your turn.
Yes, one moment. I'll show you what I'm doing. I tried with this virtual thing. Can you see I don't see myself. Yes, it's working. So I built up the physical dome lots of times with Gerd Schuster, and I'm connected to Mehr Demokratie Österreich in Austria. I'm living in Vienna. This actual picture was taken in Innsbruck. Somebody knows. And yeah, it was a campaign for complementary democracy in last year, September. And yeah, we're trying many things to establish something like Mehr Demokratie in Germany, but it's big steps ahead. And yeah, maybe somebody of you could point out. Happy to be here, and I'm excited to hear all your stories and things. Should I just throw the microphone to Paulina?
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, that's me. Hello, my name is Paulina, and I'm from Poland, and I represent the organization Digital Poland Foundation. We are a non-profit organization, technological thing that turn digital challenges into opportunities for the Polish economy. So what we do, we position Poland as a leading digital innovation hub by promoting cross-industry nationwide initiative, of course, combine forces, connecting topic, and creating networks. So we share and lead digital initiatives. We have a lot of strategic partners and founders. For example, the companies like T-Mobile, Visa, Linear Axel Springer, Microsoft. So thanks for this very innovative company, we are able to push our project. And it would be very hard to tell you in this 5-minute introduction what actually we are doing, because there is a lot of initiatives like reports and challenges and contests. But I would like to tell you more about our main initiative, which is Digital Festival. And this is the biggest education technological initiative in Poland, festival. So what we do, we educate society and raise awareness of benefits of being digital. So we are not talking about digital future, but about digital present, and we show people what are the real benefits of digitalization for them. So of course, COVID-19 has improved our digital skills and accelerate digitalization, but I would say that there's still a lot to do. This is why I'm happy that we are talking right now about digitalization, and it is crucial right now for Europe, I would say. So we show new technologies, and we show that they could save your life, they support your work, they help you with running your business, and we educate people how to do it. So we promote digital products and services for the businesses and customers, but also digital competences among young Polish citizens. So there is a lot of key elements of our nationwide campaign. Of course, we are, our event is all about education, and by education, I mean festival, for example, broadcasting studio. So during the festival, we invite the people that from business perspective, but also from the public sector, from the governments, to talk more about technologies. We produce podcasts, webinars, lectures, trainings, workshops. So a lot of content for everyone, and a lot of events during this 10 days, because our festival has 10 days, and it's truly digital date because it's from 1st of October until 10th of October. So 011010. And each 10 day has a specific, it's devoted to the specific topic. So we have the day like my art, my work, my company, and my finance. So for example, during the day my finance, everyone can find something for themselves. people from the business perspective, if they're looking for the opinion from the digital shapers in Poland and directors from the company that will tell them how to include the new solutions in their business in order to be more successful. But also for the normal people, if they want to, for example, learn how to pay with your credit card, we write the blogs and tell them how to do it. So yeah, this is like the full 10 days of education, and we came up with a few initiatives during these days also. For example, digital discounts. So we want to show to people the real benefit of digitalization, and every partner of our festival offers a discount for their product, but there is 2 conditions. The product needs to be, of course, on e-commerce platform online, and you need to pay cashless. So we promote this digitalization of we promote e-commerce basically, and there is many more initiatives, and I would love to tell you about it, but I'm scared that I don't have enough time, so probably I will also tell more about it later.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting and also interactive, kind of. I really do like that idea.
Yeah, we try to engage a lot of people into initiatives. So just a few numbers, we had like 100 partners across many sectors in Poland, as I said, government, academic. We had more than 15 events during this day, also co-organized with different universities. We have a lot of initiative that try to, for example, promote artificial intelligence. During the festival, we launched our cooperation with the University of Helsinki and Finnish company Reactor that created the first course from the basic of artificial intelligence. And thanks for the European Commission, we were able to translate into Polish and help people to know the basic of artificial intelligence. We want to try to encourage 1% of Polish population to become familiar with AI and to show them that it's not something scary, it's not something from the movies, and actually it helps with our daily life. So I will stop that right now, and maybe...
No, that sounds very interesting, yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, maybe Anne, you want to continue?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Zeeuw, and I'm head of programs of Netwerk Democracy. And we are a civil society organization in the Netherlands, located in Amsterdam. And we are a platform for democratic innovation, committed as such as to building a resilient democracy in which everyone is involved and can contribute with the help of technology. So we really advocate for citizen empowerment through digital technology and share knowledge and practices of digital democracy. Our main focus is really with a digitalized society, you also need to innovate democracy. Since digital technology is really part of our daily lives, and there are more and more options for citizens to inform themselves, to get organized, to be able to follow and also to assess the work of governments, and also share their opinions and become really actively involved in decision-making processes. So this digitalization does not only call for governments to update their communication methods, but also to update their decision-making processes. So there's need for new forms in which the input of citizens can really be incorporated into policy making. So yeah, we call for really the use of digital tools that can offer these new possibilities for groups of people to get involved and to shape their own living environments. And really to let our democracy survive, we need to strengthen this deliberative democracy and make participation and interaction with citizens a valuable part of it. And yeah, on the European level, Netwerk Democracy has been promoting a digital participatory democracy. since its start in 2011. So we advocate for digital participation at the European level. We also share local innovation practices with other democratic innovators throughout Europe. Since there are many challenges that we have in common in cities all over Europe, so we can learn from each other and share knowledge on how to improve citizen participation digitally also. Also, we advocate for the use of open source participatory technology, because when you use open source code, you can really enhance the transparency, and citizens can look into the code and see if it's functioning in a just way. And governments can also collaborate in developing these public tools that are in public ownership. So we should be really careful to outsource our democratic processes to commercial platforms. So we support the use of open source democracy tools for governments, and really develop these tools that are in public ownership that everyone can use. And we do not only advocate for technology as a tool and an instrument to improve democracy, but also to democratize technology. So citizens should also have a bigger say in the development of technology. For example, with technologies that have a big impact on our democracies, such as artificial intelligence and automatic decision making. So we also need to involve citizens in this discussion about the development of technologies and how they can really benefit society. So use these technologies to really address societal problems and not only efficiency and profit making. So that's our work in a nutshell.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you so much. Okay, Hendrik, can you go on?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Hendrik. I'm with ECAS, the European Citizen Action Service based in Brussels. We are enhancing a citizen. So we have the goal to enhance the citizen-centricness of the European Union generally, and have one focus area, which is EU democracy. And there, of course, digital democracy is a big part of that. I won't talk too much about the details about ECAS. I'm very happy if someone is more interested in the work we're doing. Just in a nutshell, maybe the two fields where digital democracy kicks in for us is, on the one hand, tools that enhance democracy for citizens and to engage either with other citizens or with administrations or decision makers, and to understand better what tools work and what tools don't work and how we can make them better. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, we are also following, of course, regulative questions here in Brussels on digital tools, how they might impact citizens' rights, democracy, etc., etc. So lots of things that Justin already mentioned that I won't bring up again at this point. So, yep.
Okay, thank you for that. Juha, correct me if I pronounce it wrong. Juha?
Perfect.
Juha? Okay.
All you have to remember, it's Slovenian for soup, apparently. I'm from Finland, not Slovenia, but I've heard this in a lot of places. Yeah, I'm Juha and I come from Finland. I come from an organization called Verke, and we are very fortunate in that we are, I believe we are the only organization in Europe only dedicated to digital youth work. So we're actually fully funded by our Ministry of Culture and Education. So we're good to go in that sense. And we have 7 people working in our little team. So we mainly train youth workers on digital youth work topics. And it's really about how to train or how to engage young people with digital means in all different kind of sectors. And a few topics that are currently really a lot on our desk is, I would say, I think our first approach is pretty much to kind of try to dispel youth workers' fears around technology, because they have a lot of kind of trepidation to using technology within youth work, and that's just because they don't know what it is. I'm a huge nerd. I'm a huge technology geek. I love sci-fi, and one of my favorite sci-fi authors, Arthur C. Clarke, has a quote: "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." And that's kind of my basis on technology education, because if you don't really know how things work, how technology works, everything might as well be powered by pixies and stardust. So then you can't really use it to your advantage. So what we try to do is kind of take a hands-on approach to educating youth workers, having them use Arduino, having them build robots with us, and constantly talking about the youth work aspect. Like, how does this benefit young people as well? Now, when I say young people, the youth work target group in Finland is mainly about 12 years old to 18. Of course, some organizations work with older young people as well, but that's kind of the main target group. So that's where I'm coming from mostly. Secondly, we talk about digital life skills a lot. So we talk about in Finland, at least traditionally, the youth field kind of understand digital skills as, can I make a proper CV, or can I apply for a job? And this kind of a lot of stuff around employability, a lot of stuff around like, can I participate in civic society by, let's say, using those e-participation platforms. But what we also talk about is the kind of all-encompassing effect of digitalization on young people's lives, like how much kids grow up now kind of basing their self-image around digital media rather than people around them, or it's a bit blended, at least, with the two. And like, what kind of skills do you need not only to fill out the CV, but rather also to find your own peer groups now? How do you connect with other people? Because it's a lot around digital means as well. Like, do they have access to that technology? Do they have the skills to use technology, etc., etc.? So we produce information, we produce publications aimed for the youth field, and also trainings. We host trainings on the topic. Thirdly, what I find myself talking a lot about nowadays is youth participation, and especially from the viewpoint of how young people themselves like to participate in society. If it's not necessarily the formal means of participation or the kind of avenues that we adults offer them, but what do they do to actually influence society? The problem is that if young people use, for example, social media to kind of get their voices heard, the youth workers don't necessarily recognize it as participation or influencing society. So it's a bit tricky. So we do this a lot with the youth workers as well.
Thank you for that. That sounds also really interesting. Maybe Christian can continue and add something.
I'd love to, or at least give it a whirl. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Inspiring to hear what everybody else is doing. I'm representing tonight Center for Digital Youth Care in Denmark. Very much like Verke, we are a digitally oriented youth outreach program. What that basically means is that we have two general legs. One of them is our online counseling. We've, for the past 16 years, been running online counseling for kids in both groups and peer talks, where we bridge them or put them together in groups where they have the same topic. Because what we've found over the past 15 years is that young people having young people problems would most of the time rather talk to slightly older children or young people, instead of someone like me, like mid-30s, coming in and telling them, all right, when I was your age, we would totally just like do this. And they're like, all right, boomer, like, shoo, go away. So instead, we try to put up networks for young people in a constructive manner to talk about youth problems with each other. We monitor everything, and we try to moderate, but also try to keep the moderation at a minimum, because it's their space. We just kind of back and develop it. So counseling is one thing we do. The other part is science and research outreach programs. That's where I'm censored. I started doing a lot of my work in gaming, trying to explain youth workers and parents, what is gaming? Is gaming still Pac-Man and Super Mario, or did something happen over the past 20 years? and from that develop a sort of a narrative about good gaming. How do we do good gaming? Our take on it has been that good gaming is not based on the game, but rather on the gamers. Like, we can take a mediocre game like Fortnite, but if we put it in a very constructive social dynamic, it all of a sudden becomes a good game. And we can take great games and make them less great by taking them out of social contexts, or by putting them into a context where they're played too much, or at the wrong time, or in the wrong mood set. So we work a lot with kids and screens, or young people and screens, but focusing on the human aspect of it. Over the past 3-4 years, I've been very active in as a natural development of my work in gaming, where one of the finds I had over some years was that there's very few women in gaming. And when we started looking into that, one thing we found was that the girls often try to get into gaming around grade 5 or 6, but they're told that girls can't game, or they game the wrong things, or, oh my god, Sims is such a girl game, don't play that, you need to come over and play Counter-Strike. And the guys have been playing Counter-Strike for the past 5 years, so they will play better than the girls, and thus confirming the fact that the guys had that gaming is a guy's thing. So coming from that, I've been looking a lot at how the gender stereotypes are enforced in a lot of online spaces. So both in gaming, social media, where, for an example, in democratic or political engagements, we've found in Denmark, working with the Institute for Human Rights, that young men are usually attacked on their opinions, on their presentation, or what they think and feel, whereas women are attacked on their bodies, their looks, or their gender. Like, how did you get a computer into the kitchen? Or, oh my god, you only think that because you have lipstick on, stuff like that. And the result of that we've seen is that women stop participating in the democratic debate. So part of mitigating that is for me to educate young people on these dynamics, but also to talk about youth care workers around them, to say that even though this might look like a digital problem and you want Facebook or Twitter to fix it, this is about people. This is about how we interact in power structures. And the latest development on that is that I've been working with trying to analyze and basically count the aggressive, anti-feministic and misogynistic digital groups in the Nordic countries, so Denmark, Finland, Norway, Sweden, and Iceland, where we've been looking at exactly how many incels can we find, these involuntary, celibate, militarized, violent groups, blaming women, modern women feminists, for choosing not to give them sex. How many of those can we find? How many aggressive, violent, revolutionary men's rights activists can we find? And like trying to track a lot of these people and a lot of these groupings around the Nordic countries. And what we have found will be presented at a large conference in Denmark, I think next week, with also Finnish, Norwegian, and Swedish speakers. But we basically do that to analyze digital democracy. Like, what is the level of education, participation, and engagement from young people, and how do we get more young people to use the internet, use the digital environment to its full extent?
Thank you for that. Okay, so we have some other participants. John, can you hear us? Do you want to continue, John? If not, that's no problem. Maybe Ina? Well, that's totally fine if you don't want to say anything or...
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
You can just introduce yourself and tell us why you're interested in the topic.
Okay, my name is Ina, and I am working for the Pan-European Party, Volt. So, if you know it. And I just know the European public sphere from events that we had together. So I was just interested into the discussion, and also I work in the field of banking where digitalization is a very important trend. So I'm interested anyway in this development. So therefore I just wanted to hear a different perspective from people with different backgrounds, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah, thank you. That's totally fine. I'm interested too. So we have Veronica with us. Could you go on?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Veronica. Well, as it says in my virtual background, I come from Romania, so I'm originally from Romania. I have started here this community. Well, it's a community, it's a think tank mostly, Digital Citizens. We basically started the community about 5 years ago when in the EU a lot of policies were becoming compulsory, directives and different regulations. So it was creating from this need to connect the Romanian stakeholders, either it was the private sector or public institutions, to the European debates and make sure that they have a more active role, if nothing else. But also it's a lot of awareness, advocacy and information that we try to facilitate. But then in addition to this, my work has been always connected with the youth sector. So I come with 15 years of work in the national and the European context. So during the past years, I have been working a lot with different institutions and organizations to bring together the two topics, and that is youth and digital. So it's been a lot of research and consultancy that I've been doing for the youth partnership between the UN and Council of Europe, for the Council of Europe and the Youth Department, and then the UNDP as well, because everyone now tries to make sense, about what's happening right now, mostly because of the pandemic, we have to be honest. But I think 1 year ago, they were already starting to feel the need to be part of the debate. And I will be honest here, because this is a very complicated discussion to have when we deal with digital issues, because digital policies are not necessarily accessible for many people and stakeholders overall. And right now, even at national level, we are dealing with a gap of, let's say, making sense of the strategies and the amount of legislation that is being discussed at the EU level. So bringing youth into the discussion is basically creating or contributing to the chaos right now, because young people have never been seen or even so much connected with digital policies. So you might have the discussion on the digital skills or digital action plan, which is not necessarily linked to young people and the youth sector necessarily. So imagine this is quite complicated. And for example, for next year with the Youth Department of the Council of Europe, we are preparing the second seminar on youth and impact of artificial intelligence. And we are trying to map the many processes that happen, and not just the EU, because you have the EU, you have the Council of Europe, you have the OECD, and then you have the UN, especially through UNESCO, many of them creating legal binding instruments of how to regulate AI, basically technologies that will have impact on all citizens. And young people, we like it or not, should be really high on the agenda, if nothing else, for the plain reason that they are the majority of the users right now. Either they are the best educated or not, that's not even the point. They really are. In EU alone, it's more than 90% of young people using daily the internet, which is more than about 85%, and they are still the best digitally skilled right now. And this is just young people up to 24. After that, we are decreasing our competencies and knowledge. But this is the point I want to make in the very beginning, and that is, this is something we are just scratching the surface on, and just because we have been pushed a bit by the pandemic, but it's not necessarily a trend that will continue after that. But we do need, and it's something several of you have mentioned already, and that is democratized participation in digital processes. And this is so far something for experts. So I always see all these high-level expert groups that are being created, and all institutions have these expert groups, but they don't really have that many NGOs, civil society organizations, let alone any youth organization. So I think this would be the part that we have to build on and to keep understanding. And that's why my work came into place, because everyone wants to get the insight, but the insight, it's not so plain and obvious, I guess. So yeah, that's it from my side. And this is how my work is linked to your discussion today.
Thank you, Veronica. Mathias, do you want to continue? And after you, we have Päivi. I probably pronounced that totally wrong. Yeah, but first, Mathias, you could go on.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Mathias Pontier. I have a background as a scientist, and in science I worked on artificial intelligence and psychology. So more specifically, I was working on emotional intelligence and ethics for computers and robots. So I'm very interested in regulating AI. Actually, I was working on machine ethics to make computers and robots take human ethics into account while making their own decisions. So that's one connection that came up immediately when I just heard about regulating AI. Next to that, I'm also a board member of More Democracy in the Netherlands. So we focus on referenda, citizen initiatives, and democracy in times of Corona, for instance. I'm also active for the Citizens Foundation, with which we develop open source e-democracy tools. So this can be platforms to gather IDs, to discuss IDs, and to have people vote on IDs, to gather the best IDs from large groups of people. There's also platforms for participative budgeting. So you get a budget, and together with a big crowd, you can think of projects to do with this budget and to decide on which projects to pick. We're also working on a live debate system in which you can, well, debate live, but also the content from the debate is automatically organized afterwards. So you can keep them as separate clips that can be easily found, and that you can also vote on and give arguments for and against afterwards. So this could be very useful for the European Union to gather ideas from citizens, but actually it could also be interesting to use this for these Europe jams like this one. I would say these kind of platforms are best to combine with citizen assemblies and referenda. So for instance, you gather a lot of great ideas on a platform, then in a citizen assembly you can elaborate on these ideas and, and improve them a little bit. And when people actually sit next to each other and discuss it with each other, they will take each other more into account, and it can lead to, well, an optimization, or you can make the ideas even better. And then you can hold a referendum afterwards to see what you thought of in this group also is a good idea at the larger group of people. So to prevent that you get into a tunnel focus with your group. With the people from the Citizens Foundation and some others, I also co-founded ID Synergy, which basically actually delivers the same services, but also for companies and other organizations. So it's, you could say, that the commercial variant of the Citizens Foundation. Next to that, I'm also active for the Pirate Party. We are not only pan-European, but actually worldwide. And at the Pirate Party, we don't want to use digital technology to repress people, but we wanted to use it to empower people. I was, among others, a lead candidate for the European elections in 2014. And in that same year, we got a seat in Amsterdam. And then we worked, among others, or in the city district of Amsterdam West, I should say. But from that, we worked on an e-democracy platform. That's also how I got in contact with the Citizens Foundation. So now there's a platform called The Voice of Amsterdam, in which people can post IDs, vote on the IDs, and discuss them, like I explained before. I'm also a representative for the Pirate Party and the Water Authority. So our responsibilities is, the Netherlands is for a large part below sea level. So it's to protect us from the water, to manage the water levels, and to clean the water. And actually, one recent topic is digital security, because I have been warning actually about this for a while, but now it's shown that the digital security is basically compromised. And this is not only just like the tax administration, it's actually also about vital infrastructure. So it could be that our water gates or the water cleaning system or the bridges can also be vulnerable because they are connected to the same system. And that's maybe also an interesting topic. I think in general, digital security of vital infrastructure is generally overlooked. It's really important because you can cause a lot of damage. For instance, if you hack a power plant, or if you open the water gates and flood the country, right?
Right.
Yeah, and well, currently at the Pirate Party, I'm also running to become party leader for the elections in 2021. So that's kind of exciting.
Thank you.
Just a few short issues that I want to address and campaigns that are going on now that I want to get your attention on. I think patents are interesting. Patents block innovation, so I think we should ban patents on, for instance, genetics, biotechnology, and software, and anything that's trivial. That will be better for the knowledge economy in Europe. And instead of rewarding researchers with a monopoly, we can also reward them with money, especially with medicine. I think this is important because now a lot of people who need medicines, they don't get them because they're too expensive. If you don't reward with a monopoly, but you reward the researchers directly with money, everybody can get the medicines that they need, and still the researchers have a good incentive to do the research. Another thing is upload filters, which I like to call censorship machines, because that's what they actually are. They automatically filter content and censor it even before it gets uploaded. The European Parliament already voted against it, but they're back on the agenda. Yeah, sometimes it happens with bad legislature that they keep on coming back like zombies. Well, yeah, also with this one. And these upload filters, they often fail. So they censor all kinds of things that they shouldn't censor. So sometimes when war crimes exposed, it's censored. Even a speech of Dutch European parliamentarian Marietje Schake on torture was automatically filtered. So yeah.
That sounds complicated. I'm sorry to cut you off here, but we want to discuss and need like 45 minutes for the discussion. And we still have Päivi Amila left, who also want to introduce her project, and then we can start the discussion and share our thoughts and ideas, because it's a big group with lots of areas and fields in the digitalization. Yeah, Päivi, do you want to continue and end the introduction round?
Okay, thank you. I just tried to share the screen, but it's not allowed to me. So, well,
it's really hard to understand you. Can you hear us? Can you hear her? No. Okay, I'm really sorry. Päivi, maybe when you come back. Oh, okay. We
when
really
my telephone rings, it causes problems with this internet connection. Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I live in the middle of nowhere, in a very old house. I'm not alone, so I'm a little bit present here now. Yes, but I work as a researcher, university lecturer for sociology at the University of Eastern Finland. And currently I'm leading a project concerning the unequal lives of young people in socio-technological imperatives and imaginaries. And the idea is that we live in a digital society in Finland, in a very, how would I say, a totally developed digital society. And there are many promises around these digital processes. For example, promises that technological means can somehow promote equality among young people, can make participation possible for people all over the country, and doesn't somehow, or how would I say, for example, that it doesn't matter where people live, because you can study everywhere, you can participate, you can vote, for example, you can have hobbies in the internet, you can meet your friends in internet, and so on. And now we see in statistics that actually this digital society, it's not so fair. And there are many kinds of inequalities among young people. Still, learning differences, learning difficulties, participation is somehow, there are active young people and passive young people, and so on. Young people who live far away from cities suffer from many kinds of lacks, for example, in their lives, and so on. So our aim is to somehow to trace this new way of seeing this digital divide, because we have access, we have technology, we have infra here, but it's still not fair. It's still not equal yet.
Yeah, I do understand.
Our idea, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
That's why I'm very interested in this group, what you are doing here. Yeah.
I mean, we heard a lot of very different approaches and areas. So maybe someone has a question. I'm sure someone has a comment, because yeah, so you can just raise your hand and go for it. No one?
I can go if you want.
Yes.
I heard a lot of people talking about like e-democracy, digital democracy. You know, consulting people and better involving them in decision-making processes. Mathias, I also heard you speaking about using technology to empower people. But what I've been seeing so far is kind of the opposite. Is the fact that for me, what I observe is that technology has a strong centralization aspect to it. So it's really, it allows a few companies to centralize power. And also when I worked at the Commission, I felt that a lot of the consultation mechanisms that we have are not so effective. It's more like, we have to do this, so we send out some consultation documents. There's 10 people responding from across the EU, but I don't really feel that there's a meaningful influence. And I feel a lot of people here are really trying to make that happen. So I was just wondering if there's like successful initiatives that work, or what do you see are the problems there? Just off the bat, this is not all my expertise. I'm like a legal competition law scholar, so. But I would just be interested to know how you look at that.
Yeah, I see a raised hand by Mathias. I don't know if you want to comment on that or have another.
Well, yeah, both. I think part of the solution is that when technology emerges, and especially now with digital technologies, you need new rights for this digital society. So one of the things is that we should have encryption. That's one of the things I wanted to mention earlier anyway. It may be that the interior ministers in the European Union could break encryption so they can spy on us, but also would mean that criminals, terrorists, or state actors can also spy on us or spy on our politicians. So please contact your local representatives to make sure encryption is kept. Another campaign is also very important. It's Reclaim Your Face. You can find it on reclaimyourface.eu. So because facial recognition technology emerges, it's important that we don't have facial recognition in public space. I would say this is actually already illegal through the GDPR, but it's still happening. So this should be completely transparent. It should be banned in public space, and we should stop treating people like experiments, like walking barcodes, but actually treat them as humans. Yeah, so please join this campaign at reclaimyourface.eu, and with the upload filters, you can also contact your representatives. I can post some links in the chat if people are interested.
That would be
Yeah,
nice.
maybe.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Just continue, Henry.
No, I'm just to answer to Justin's point. I think the point of power concentration and kind of this bottlenecks that you need to get through in order to get to the digital space is a very fair point here to make and to raise. And of course, the obvious solution, and we heard that already quite like a number of times, I think, like from Anne and also from Mathias, would be to create your own platforms, or to create your own spaces where people can discuss, where people can take decisions. And in fact, there are like a great number of these examples where that actually works well, and where NGOs create open source software that is used in order to facilitate citizen liberation online, for example. At the same time, of course, this comes with a challenge of, and that's also what we see in our work, of how do you drive people away from where they already are. And I think this is something that is, yeah, the biggest challenge in this scope, because, okay, it's great if everyone can access, but people are rather lazy, and if you don't get them where they are, how do you drive them there? But I think the best solution to this, and to kind of bypass the big multinational companies and their powers, would be to go for your own applications. But then again, another challenge, of course, they must be great and very handy and very user-friendly, because if they're not, no one will use them. So that again comes with money questions. Then, okay, who's funding these things? So I mean, we could go on and on and on about this, but yeah, as such, I would say best solution would be open source own platforms.
Thank you, Hendrik. Christian, you raised your hand. Do you want to comment on that?
Yes. Super good insight from both Hendrik and Mathias. I fervently agree. The working especially with young people, like one of the issues we have with fighting this power concentration, or let's call it social media centralization aspect, is that exactly what you touched upon, Hendrik. Anything made open source, anything made openware, freeware usually sucks. Either it's ugly, or it's unhandy, or it's just a bad product compared to the multi-billion-dollar machine that is Instagram, which is amazingly easy to use. Like even TikTok. I can see why TikTok is super bad from that power or centralization aspect, but it's a pretty compelling app to use. So how we usually go about that, like my job as a public speaker, especially to young people or policymakers around young people, is to just point out how, I hate to use the word, but like to dumb it down to how algorithms work, like what data is collected, what data is presented. We know for a fact that TikTok presents happy, white, pretty people. Like, so that is that network that you're using. Do you want to be part of that? And instead of trying to drive them to some sort of open source, handy dandy, anonymized app, the tiny pirate in the back of my mind is like at least trying to drive them away from Instagram and away from the centralized networks, which sometimes work. And like maybe out of a couple hundred, you can reach a handful. That would say, then you usually reach the geeks who are interested in open source or open software, and they'll come up after the talk and have like the right questions. But I find it easier to lead them away from evil centralized organs than to drive them into unsexy, unhandy apps.
Thank you, Christian. Veronica, you raised your hand as well.
Yeah, also because I felt that the question went also into how we are not using technology to participate. And I feel that during this pandemic, we have noticed exactly this part, actually, that many governments, including EU institutions, have very little used digital technologies to enable participation of citizens and engage them in any decision-making process. We just noticed restrictions, okay, from not protesting or organizing in any, public spaces, but otherwise we don't see a substitute to that. And I think this is the essence, and this is the real, the biggest bottleneck that we are facing. On the one hand, that the EU institutions are quite satisfied in driving consultation through two approaches, and one is through surveys, whatever form of consultation, closed questions, open questions, but it's a survey, and face-to-face or virtual meetings. So these are the main approaches. And again, even in national governments, very few of them have deployed consultation platforms. So any e-government solution that would directly enable citizens to contribute through something more than a basic form, where you still have to go through the 50 pages of a document and still have to read everything and propose amendments. So there have not been created any other more creative solutions. And I think this is the biggest problem. I wouldn't have a problem if a public institution would use Facebook or Instagram or TikTok to drive a consultation with citizens. And actually, whenever citizens do that, they don't do it because they have the feeling they would reach to the decision makers. On the contrary, they do it to gain more momentum and support. And I think this is the problem. You were all mentioning AI. So the EU just closed the consultation on the white paper on artificial intelligence, and it just received about 1,200 responses, including private citizens and organizations. And I think it's really outrageous to propose a legislation based just on that right now when everyone is online. So this was my comment. And unfortunately, I don't have good practices, but I am researching that from youth and digital activism with the UNDP, and we really struggle to find good practices on this. That was my take, sorry.
Thank you very much. Juha, maybe you want to continue?
Yeah, kind of to add to that whole thing, I think it's interesting how I mentioned that we work with like how youth workers should recognize young people's own ways of participation, which is, for example, the activism on TikTok. And the problem is that it's from the institutional point of view, from the EU point of view as well, from the legislative point of view, it's seen as kind of less than the actual means of participation. And that's obviously a problem, because then young people's voices will not be taken seriously. Then again, they are, as Christian mentioned, they are the force of evil. So how do we kind of take that over for the side of good, at least partially? Because when we take those nice open source platforms, which, like Christian said, unfortunately look like crap most of the time and they barely work, and more importantly, they lack the momentum of users. And then if you look at TikTok, Instagram, the kids are already there. So how can we leverage that momentum into actual youth participation and young people influencing society in that way? But it needs to be structured somehow, because otherwise it will never be taken seriously. And that's the big question, how?
Yes, thank you very much. Anne, you want to comment on that, or on the participation part?
Yeah, just a short reaction on using Instagram, that it works better than open source tools. I think there's no problem in using these kind of very nice, smooth working tools for communication and creating momentum and sharing the message. But really having voting on ideas or having decision making on policy proposals or other decision-making processes, it's really important to do that on a trustworthy platform. So I think it can really be strengthen each other, and we can be used in combination. And I think a few years ago, with also ICAS as a partner, we did a project, EU Crowd, in which we also looked at how could digital citizen participation work on a European level. And I think this report can be found online. I can share it. But what also came from it is that there should also be something very interesting and concrete to have impact on if people want to participate, and especially also youth, of course. So it's not only the platform that we need to talk about. It's of course also, opening up this policy making process and opening up institutions. So these things go very much hand in hand.
Yes, thank you. Christian.
Yeah, thank you. I really do like and appreciate the hand-in-hand approach. One way we've seen young people do it in Denmark is to actively try to fight what the centralized powers of social media platforms can be used for. Like last month, we had a rather large campaign focused on high school students that on Instagram promoted to hashtag free the nipple. Like it's an international movement, but it gained traction on high school level in Denmark, where men would show a nipple. That's not censored by Instagram. Women would do it as well. That is censored. Now let's talk about sexualization of gender, etc. But what we've seen is that even though these campaigns might reach, let's be generous and say 2/3 of the teens on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, then those that are interested in working actively with the campaign or the premises of it extrapolate those thoughts away from the social media into some of these less sexy, less handy networks. But then you have the social media centralized platforms as the foreground or the trenches of digital warfare, and then the geeks or the brains behind campaigns will go somewhere else, accept the fact that we need to formulate battle plans in a closed forum somewhere out on the far reaches of the internet, and then go back onto Instagram to implement campaigns. But we've seen young people do that sporadically, but also via their own coalition. So like, I think that's a very healthy approach from young people to use technology against the technology itself.
Yes, thank you. John, do you want to add something?
Yes, thank you, Josephine, and thank you everyone for a great conversation so far. My background is in technology, working in the software industry, but I've also had a long-term interest in democracy and built a platform for doing online petitioning, which was adapted in the UK by one of our major national newspapers and used as their platform for doing politics, in big inverted commas. I'm really interested in what you've been talking about today, because it's a very broad and complex topic to figure out what democracy is and then what tools you need to make that happen. And the problem we have with democracy today, in my view, is that democracy, Western liberal democracy, is not very democratic. And if you look at the institutions that are involved in making decisions on behalf of the people, as it were, it's not a democratic process, either in Europe, under the European Union, or in the UK, or in most Western governments. And if you want to get involved in politics, and if you want to make decisions about your life and change how policies are made, there are really two ways of doing it. One is to join a political party, which is the obvious route. That's your, number one opportunity to get involved in making policy. And the other is to form some sort of campaigning group or get involved in a campaigning group. And then finally, I guess you have industrial associations or civic associations that look to influence the political parties. So they're sort of on the outside and they're influencing the political parties. Now along comes the internet, and we have this open, distributed, democratic platform that most people can get involved in. And it doesn't reflect in any way really how we currently make decisions using elected representative democracy. And so that puts us in a position of, well, what should we do now? Should we digitize democracy as it stands today, i.e. the constitution under which we make decisions? And we're all pretty similar, whatever country we're in, more or less, although I know some countries are having more troubles than others right now. But broadly, the way we make decisions, should we digitize that? And I suppose an analogy could be, should Encyclopedia Britannica create a digital version of Encyclopedia Britannica that was around in books for 250 years and then suddenly got digitized? Or should it form Wikipedia? Should it create an environment where anyone can contribute knowledge and it becomes a social good for everyone's use? And those are the two models, and the same thing's happening in retail, and the same thing is happening in social engagement, and the same thing is happening in security and privacy and technology. These things, you can either digitize an existing thing, whether that's a shop or a book or a whatever it is, or you can create the internet version of it. And the internet version of democracy looks nothing like the way we currently do democracy. It's nothing like the way you would design today with your knowledge and your understanding of the digital platform. You would in no way design it such that it currently looks like the European Union's institutions, or the British Parliament and our lovely House of Lords and all the rest of it. You just wouldn't design it that way if you had the choice. So I'm going to wrap up now because I'm sort of going on a bit. But in terms of what I think, my focus, what my interest in is primarily in is, if we get to the point where everyone in a country has a digital ID, and let's say, for example, there's an issue and 90% of the people in that country go on the internet for the sake of argument. I know there are major communication challenges in making that happen, and we've talked about some of those today. But 90% of the people say, no, I don't want that thing in the country. Now they're digitally ID'd, they've contributed. This isn't an online anonymous petition, it's not a Facebook post, it's not Instagram. It's a digital ID. And that digital, if 90% of the people say, no, we don't want that thing, then what is the relationship between, Parliament or your, political institution and the people and the will of the people? Because if Parliament then says, well, actually, no, we are going to do that, even though 90% of people, verified people, said, no, we don't want it, then we suddenly get into this conflict. And I think that's what's happening now. We are on the cusp of a major conflict between the ability for us to coalesce and make decisions in a meaningful way, where we have informed opinions and where we are verified in our identity. That is coming head to head with all of these other soft institutions and the pretense that elected representatives are actually, in some way related to the will of the people. And another prime example of that is what happened in Iceland, because Iceland, as I'm sure many of you know, crowdsourced their constitution. So after the financial crash, Iceland said, hang on, this is a really corrupt system. The elite are making decisions that we don't agree with. So we're going to crowdsource the rewriting of our constitution. And they did, and it was a wonderful case study, and you can read all about it online. I mean, it's a fantastic example of people power. But then that people power suddenly got into conflict with the Parliament, and Parliament said, well, we're not going to ratify it. So these examples are starting to happen, and they're happening in small ways in certain areas and at constitutional levels in some countries. And I think for me, you can spend your whole time, and I think particularly at your stage of your involvement, and you're right in the thick of it, many of you can spend a lot of time frustrated with tweaking government existing democratic processes that don't really make sense in a digital age, when really you should be focusing, I think, as much as possible on creating the alternative that is going to change what that thing is. Because it is going to happen. And the question is it going to be a big scary thing that's controlled by big tech and controlled by billionaires because they've got the money to make it happen? And money is a big issue here. You need a decent business model, and it needs to make sense in a constitutional perspective.
And I'm really sorry to interrupt. Right. We're approaching the end of the session.
I'm going to wrap up on that one. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks for all the input. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on your point already, or if there were some other points that you still wanted to make.
Maybe I would just I want to briefly add that I completely agree with most of the things that were raised during the conversation. And I just want to stress that from our point of view, because we are organized this digital festival, very important to talk about the policy frameworks and to have very objective conversation about this topic is to educate society, because every year we do this survey among Poles. We'll Poles became Society 5.0 and used some parts of this Japanese concept, how that states that technologies can help us to overcome the strategic problems. And for example, 97% of Poles, they believe that technologies are needed. But in many cases, and we can we can still see this in Europe when it comes to technologies that they are not well educated of in the area. For example, 5G. People are scared of, and if we really want to work on a good policy for the Europe especially, we need to educate people, because if they will have like a higher acceptance for innovation technology, then we can find the right solution for us, and also for the fact how new technologies are affecting democracy. So there is no innovation without people, and I think that one of our goals right now in Europe should be to educate people what actually technologies are, what threats they can cause, and what are the advantages of the technology. So that's all from my side.
Yes, thank you, Paulina. Mathias, please continue.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I completely agree with Anna that democracy tools should definitely be open source. And also about using non-open source tools, I think that's fine. But now sometimes I see people, for instance, on Twitter referring to a Facebook post they made. I think if you use these tools, then don't use them to point at you know, the forces of evil, as someone just mentioned, but use them to point to at least good tools then. So basically use the forces of evil to advertise good stuff. I think this Iceland crowdsourcing of a constitution is a great example. I always like to look at all these different kinds of participation as a toolbox. And with digital tools, but also with non-digital tools, we get a bigger and bigger toolbox, and they all add up to each other if you use them right. So use all the tools to get as many people people as possible to participate, and then use that together. And actually, I think with crowdsourcing the constitution, it worked quite well. There was online input, there was input in the sessions, you know, from the elected group that worked on the constitution. Then they used a referendum to see whether people actually liked it, and then that the parliament didn't want to ratify. Yeah, I think that's a very bad thing. And I think well, part of the solution is using the tools together in a good way. That already happened, and then the other solution is give more power to the people. Basically, it should have been a binding referendum, and it should have never been possible for Parliament to reject what 2/3 of the population wanted.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else wants to comment? Yes, Justin, please.
Thanks. I'll keep it very short because I don't have a lot of time. But just to say that the coming year, I'll also be looking a lot at digital investments or investments in digital skills at EU level and infrastructure. And we're looking as well as the EU process on the Future of Europe Convention, where they also discuss exactly these type of questions. So how can we make EU decision-making more democratic? Should we change the treaties perhaps? You know, how do we do things? How can we do it better? And I think, of course, that a lot of the member states are not interested to make any changes, but we'll be setting up a project to see, like to push for some significant democratization of EU decision-making. Again, I'm not an expert on this, but I'm happy to bring in your expertise or rely on your networks or showcase projects that you have. So if you're interested, I'll share my email in the chat, so just drop me a line. Cheers, and thanks. It was really interesting to talk to you.
Thank you very much. So yeah, as we don't have a lot of time left now, so at the end of our sessions, we like to gather some key takeaways from our sessions. So maybe what do you think are the main issues regarding digitalization? What do you think needs to change, or shortly, how can we achieve that? So just some takeaways from this session. That I mean, you mentioned a lot of it already, but just maybe to wrap it up. And of course, I don't know, Hendrik, would you like to say something? You raised your hand.
Yeah, I raised my hand, but just before you said that, maybe just to close the loop on what Justin said on digital skills.
Of course,
that
please.
We should not forget about digital literacy and the challenges that comes with that. I mean, it's great if we now all talk about how everything will be digital and how everyone is accessing democracy from their smartphones and whatever. But at the same time, we should also be aware that not everyone has an internet access in the European Union. Not everyone has a smartphone, even though, of course, it's growing and growing. But even though they have, they might not be able to use a new tool, especially like elderly people, that is given to them where they have a perfect opportunity to participate. But at the same time, they are not equipped to do so personally. So I think that's an important point we shouldn't forget at this stage, when being very enthusiastic, of course, about the possibilities we have here, and rightfully so, to make sure that actually everyone is included in this and no one is excluded because we shifted online, which as such, of course, should create more inclusion, but maybe sometimes actually it also creates exclusion. So just as a last point from my side. And then as a takeaway is, I mean, the points that we discussed here. I mean, John made some very interesting points here to maybe actually rethink how democracy is made with the digital tools that we have, which of course, yeah, requires a lot of fantasy at this stage. But yeah, maybe we all get together to have this fantasy eventually. So.
Thank you. John, do you want to continue?
Yes. I'm not sure it's a fantasy.
It requires fantasy. I don't say it's a fantasy, but it requires fantasy to come up to something.
It requires hope, and hope comes from a belief in progress and the ability to change. And I think probably as people, we all favor change and progress for the good of the people. And I think, you know, to avoid authoritarianism being baked into software, as all processes are turning into software today, you know, the existing process will become extremely authoritarian unless there's a counter to that. And you know, I've done a lot of thinking about it. So if anyone's interested, and research, and as I said, I've built and launched a commercial platform as well. So if anyone's interested, do feel free to reach out, and I'd love to take it further.
Yes, thank you. Veronica, please.
Yeah, well, to close on a more positive note, because I'm really passionate about this topic, I still have the feeling that citizens' time in digital policy is at the very early beginning. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because digital policies are currently very much shaped because the economic impact. So I think we are just realizing the potential or the positive and negative impact it has on citizens and our human rights even. So I think it will be a momentum to gain and shift the debate a little bit. So also probably all these policies can address a little bit the issues that we have here. And also another point, let's not put all our hopes in this digital literacy basket. It will be so important, but it's not something we can wait for. So we still have to mobilize and join these debates now when they are happening, or create new ones in case we don't like these ones or the priorities that exist right now. So I really believe in the momentum, because otherwise we just might miss it. And some legislations when are passed are sometimes just more difficult to be changed if they are not passed at all. So that would be my approach. So it is momentum to explore. It is hope for us citizens and organizations that are here. So thank you so much for bridging this debate. Really.
Thank you very much. Anyone else likes to gather a takeaway? Yes, Florian.
I'm not really working in this field, but my points that I would say from my intuition are the most important things is what Shoshana Zuboff in her book The Surveillance Capitalism brought forward. So this thing, I really missed it in this jam. And another thing is that our body is very important for cognition. And in this mode of cognition, when we just look straight forward and don't move our body much, it's very difficult for us to create inner pictures, and we get more and more dull. Maybe you can recognize this if you are in Zoom meetings for long times. So there are many, many possibilities to change this. I don't know if you work in the field, probably you know these practices. Otherwise, you can ask me per mail or something, some other channel, and I'm happy to share this bodily practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Juha, please.
Yeah, I think I really like this idea of kind of exploding the whole aspect of democracy and reinventing it, in the sense that no matter how much we talk also about recognizing how young people want to influence the world, we also talk about the fact that how do we make that part of democracy, but rather how do we reinvent democracy? So that really is food for thought. It's not an easy topic to broach, but definitely something to tackle.
Yes, thank you very much. Anyone else? Maybe Justin? Do you have to add a takeaway or something?
A takeaway. No, I kind of agree with Veronica that we're at the very early stages. I think it's a big fight. It's a long fight. But I mean, if you look at the printing press, how that changed our political system, it created the nation state. I think when we talk about information technology, that is very related to how we do politics, right? So if the way we communicate changes, then also our politics change. And I think we're just at the start of this. So I also agree that we shouldn't be pessimistic. We're just in such an early stage, but there's a lot of potential to shape this. And I think that if we manage to build the right coalitions, you can actually do a lot. So I'm eager. I think I'm also ready to collaborate on that. So that's just my takeaway. Very, very general.
Thank you. Yeah, are there any questions or last comments or something you want to add to our discussion? Okay, so I think we've come to the end of our session then. And I would like to thank each and every one of you for participating and sharing your ideas and thoughts on this topic, and for this very interesting conversation that we had. And for everyone who would like to join again, we will have a little break and start off with another jam on the December 8th with a session about building blocks for European integration. But of course, we will keep you posted and remind you via email, and we invite you all to join us again. So thanks again for being here, and have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And maybe because so many of you...
Thanks, ciao.
Maybe because so many of you were talking about networking, so of course we're happy to send around a mailing list or something if all of you agree. You can also let us know by mail, and yeah, or if anyone is against it, you won't, of course. But,
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining. I'm sorry you came back really at the last minute of the session. And
I just want to add one thing, that for the next time, if you will plan to invite us again for this kind of conversation, for sure we need to have more time, because this topic is so wide and all of you guys shared with such an amazing idea and the knowledge from the insights. So it would be super nice to, extend this conversation for a long period. So thank you very much once again.